So I would like to announce Mr. Jalan Hudda.
I want you to close your eyes. That means you too, Wyatt. Picture yourself in a dark hallway with a single light at the end of the hallway. You walk to go and see the light, but it turns out to be a reflection of yourself. Behind you, you see a dark figure walking towards you. You turn and look, and there it is. The biggest, spookiest ghost you'll ever see. Hello, my name is Jalan Hudda, and welcome to my 2019 Masterworks presentation, entitled Are Ghosts Real? It's been a long year, and now I finally get to show you the mess I started back in September. Are ghosts real? Before I get started with all the facts and such, I want to tell you a story. So sit back, relax, and listen to a story that scared me more than my first lunch with Ted. In January 1971, the Perrin family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice strange things happening almost immediately after they moved in. It started small. Carolyn would notice that the broom went missing or seemed to move around from place to place on its own. She would hear the sound of something scraping against the kettle in the kitchen when no one was even in there. She would find small piles of dirt in the center of a newly cleaned kitchen floor. Carolyn researched the history of the home and discovered that it had been the same family for 8 generations, and that many of them had died under mysterious or horrible circumstances. Several of the children had drowned in a nearby creek. One was murdered, while some of them hung themselves in the attic. Now it turns out there were several spirits in that house, but none were as harmful as a spirit who had supposedly hung herself on a branch in the backyard in the mid-1800s. Before she had killed herself, she attempted to murder her only child as an insult to God and to gain a higher rank in the eyes of Satan. This story scared me because this story was later produced into a movie called The Conjuring. When I was younger, I had trouble sleeping without a light on because I was too afraid of what lurked in the dark. There was a time where I couldn't even sleep in my own room because all the fears I experienced during the day became a reality at night. The darkness, the silence, it all only brought me anxiety and fear. I remember my first time seeing what a ghost was watching Casper the Friendly Ghost. And after that, all I wanted was to have my own friendly ghost. It wasn't long after that I experienced my first scary ghost on TV. So this was my face watching Casper the Friendly Ghost, and this was my face after. I was so scared of falling asleep because I didn't know what was waiting for me under my bed, or in my closet, or even seeing a shadow in my doorway. No matter what, I'd keep a golf club beside my bed as a precaution in case anything came at me while I slept. Being put down into the basement at both my aunt's house and my grandparents' house was the greatest threat of my childhood. And let me tell you, the laundry room was definitely sheltering a demon. So now, since I've explained the reason why I wasn't able to sleep by myself until I was at least 10, let's talk about why that is. The term ghost, sometimes also known as poltergeist, haunt, apparition, or phantom, means a deceased being, whether it is a family pet or a lost family member that has died. Ghost is derived from the Old Western Germanic tribes word for supernatural being, which is geistes. In Christian writing, mainly the Bible, a sense of disembodied spirit of a dead person, often imagined as wandering among the living or haunting them. A ghost is an apparition of a dead person that is believed to appear or become manifest to the living, typically as a nebulous image. But is it? Does it have to be an apparition of a dead person? In an astounding 19 pre-literate folk religions, there are beliefs that are often summarized under animism, which is derived from the Latin word anima, which means breath and spirit. It is essentially a belief system about the continual formation of life through the spiritual nature of reality and a communion with the spirits that inhabit all things, from rocks to trees and all of life. In many cultures, malignant restless ghosts are distinguished from the more benign spirits involved in ancestor worship. There are other beliefs that the ghost or spirit never leaves the earth until there is no one left to remember the one who died. Although the human soul is sometimes symbolically or literally depicted in ancient cultures as a bird or other animal, It appears to have been widely held that the soul was an exact reproduction of the body in every feature, even down to the clothing the person wore. Of course, there is never just one of anything. There are tons of different types of ghosts. For example, one of them being what specialists call the interactive personality. The most common of all ghosts spotted is usually of a deceased person, someone you know, a family member, or perhaps even a historical figure. These ghosts can be friendly or not, but often show themselves to others in a variety of ways. They can become visible, they can speak or make noises, touch you, or even emit an odor like perfume or cigar smoke to let you know they are there. Experts say that this type of ghost retains its former personality when they were alive and can feel emotions. Often they are visiting to comfort you or to let you know something important. So if you happen to see a lost loved one, chances are they are there because they feel you want or need to see them, or you're just insane. Have you ever seen a mist or fog that almost looks like it's swirling? If so, you may be witnessing what paranormal investigators deem as an ectomist or ghostly mist. The ectoplasm is a vaporous cloud that usually appears several feet off the ground and can move swiftly or simply stay still, almost like it's spinning. These ghostly encounters have been captured on many videos and in photographs and could be white, gray, or even black. Although they can simply appear this way, linger, then move away quickly, sometimes ectoplasms appear before becoming a full-bodied apparition. Many people have witnessed them outdoors, in graveyards, battlefields, and historical sites. Just to make it easier for everyone, the green slimy ghost from Ghostbusters is an example of an ectoplasm. Next up, we have the poltergeist. This is one of the most popular beings. The word poltergeist actually means noisy ghost, and it is said to have the ability to move or knock things over, make noise, and manipulate the physical environment. While many of us have heard the term before, a poltergeist is actually one of the rarest forms of hauntings, and to many, the most terrifying. Loud knocking sounds, lights turning on and off, doors slamming, even fires breaking out mysteriously have all been attributed to this type of spiritual disturbance. Another frightening aspect of the poltergeist is that the event usually starts out slowly and mildly, then begins to intensify. While many times poltergeist activity is harmless and ends quickly, they have been known to actually become quite dangerous. For example, on an August night in a home in Thornton Heath, South London, the radio clicked on and started blasting a foreign language radio station. The family and residents had never listened to the station before, nor did they have any clue why the sudden noise occurred. In the nights following, lamps, Christmas tree ornaments, and curtains were tampered with by invisible hands. This was just the beginning of 4 years of torment by their own personal poltergeist. The case began getting physical 1 year later when the husband was assaulted by a flying figurine in the living room. He was struck so hard that he collapsed into a nearby chair. While the family tried to get him to his feet, the Christmas tree rose from the floor and started shaking. Some experts explain it as a mass form of energy that a living person is controlling unknowingly. Whatever the case may be, poltergeists have caught the attention of paranormal enthusiasts, experts, scientists, and many others who are just plain curious as thoughts. Poltergeists are also the kind of ghosts that are normally recognized in the movies as it is the most malevolent being. Orbs are probably the most photographed type of anomaly. They appear as a transparent or translucent ball of light that is hovering over the ground. It is believed that orbs are the soul of a human or even an animal that has died and is traveling around from one place to another. The circular shape they take on makes it easier for them to move around and is often the first state they appear in before they become a full-bodied apparition. If you're lucky enough to capture an orb on video, you'll be amazed by how fast they can move. In photographs, they are usually white, but can be blue as well. Although I do find these beings to be the least credible because photo editing something that simple isn't hard. Not saying I can do it, but generally, it's not that hard. The experts on these ghosts are often named paranormal investigators. The paranormal investigators that I will discuss are Ed and Lorraine Warren, and a breakdown of what exactly they did and who they were. They were the paranormal investigators who mainly dealt with the cases of hauntings. Edward Warren Minnie was born on September 7th, 1926 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He was a World War II veteran, police officer, self-taught demonologist, lecturer, and author. Lorraine Rita Warren, his wife, was a proclaimed clairvoyant and a light trance medium. Demonology is the belief in demons and how to summon them. In the article Interview with a Demonologist, written by Charlie Vasquez, a contributor to the Huffington Post, Vasquez speaks to a Toronto-based demonologist and author named Dr. Lynn Campbell. One of the questions that Vasquez asked was, how do you explain the the reason for demons to a non-believer. While Dr. Lynn's example was long and detailed, the message stayed the same throughout. Campbell says that he feels there must always be a balance. In nature, there is water and land, light and dark, hot and cold. Even in humans, there is love, kindness, and empathy, then there's cruelty. Campbell does not say there is indeed an alternate spiritual energy in the universe, but if there is one might believe that there is an opposite to the positive. Vasquez also asks, what can be done to get rid of demons from an area they prefer to haunt? Exorcism, Campbell replies. Exorcism is a multi-faith practice used by multiple cultures around the world. The word exorcism comes from the Greek word exorkismos, which means binding by oath. For example, Ed and Lorraine Warren were the paranormal investigators on loan from the church to look at a case in Enfield, England. Here, a family complained of supernatural disturbances. Due to the family's low income, media and friends thought that the accusation of a haunting was just a way to make money. Ed and Lorraine were sent there to observe and gather information for the church. Before an exorcism can be done, evidence must have been gathered to support the claim, because performing an exorcism is extremely dangerous and can injure both people in the task. Clairvoyance is the ability to obtain information from an object, person, or physical event through extrasensory perception. Extrasensory perception is also known as the sixth sense, and it is when someone gains information not through the recognized physical sense, but obtaining it through your mind. The term sixth sense was brought up by J.B. Ryan, a psychologist that researches psychic abilities such as intuition, telepathy, psychometry, and clairvoyance at Duke University. Second sight is an extrasensory perception that allows the person to witness future events through their enhanced precognition. Before an investigation, it is important to do background research about what you are investigating. The first step is to research the significance of the location, mainly looking for possible disasters and catastrophes. Interviewing the people on scene is key to figure out if they have had any incidents that are relevant to the investigation. When it comes to the tools of ghost hunting, everyday materials can be assistant to help aid the investigators. Investigators will often use 3 baseline tests in an alleged haunted location, which include temperature, humidity, and electromagnetic energy. EMF meters, or electromagnetic frequency meters, measure the nearby environment. The tools are mainly used to detect faulty electrical wires from anything to a telephone wire to a copper wire. Research suggests that the higher rate of EMF increases the credibility of a haunting. To be more clear, electromagnetic fields are a physical field that are produced by electrically charged objects, which then affect other electrically charged objects. For example, when someone gets an X-ray, they are being put under specific waves of electromagnets. EMFs give off radiation, which is why doctors and nurses are hesitant about giving you an X-ray if they're not completely sure it is necessary, even if the electromagnetic fields that are hitting you carry very low radiation. Ghosts and paranormal beings affect EMF meters as a result of the ghost hunter's presence, or as a warning. Digital thermometers measure the temperature in certain locations. When ghost hunting, thermometers are set up in cold spots. To detect whether or not there's a spirit within a certain location, the temperature must drop 10 degrees or more, thus resulting in a cold spot. One article written by Rob Schwartz states that ghosts must pull energy or heat from the environment in order to manifest. As a result, a cold spot is created. Cold spots were one of the key indicators of a haunting in the following story, the Amityville Horror. On the 13th of November, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered 6 members of his family in a house in suburban Amityville. DeFeo was jailed, causing his house to be put up for sale. In December 1975, a family moved into the home. For the next 28 days, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children would be watched and terrorized. The wife began to have visions of the murders and learned the order and in which rooms the family were killed. Every morning at exactly 3:15 a.m., George would wake up, which was approximately the time of DeFeo's murders. The family had also claimed to see green slime coming out of the cracks in the walls and the keyholes around the house. The family had realized there was something wrong with the house, so they invited a priest to come and cleanse the house. But when the priest arrived, it is said that he heard a voice scream, "Get out!" So the priest instructed the family to never sleep in a specific area of the house. The family had also experienced the classic cold zones in the house, which when dealing with a ghost or spirit was not uncommon. Things had grown worse for the family. Strange, unknown injuries were inflicted upon the women in the house, and strange footprints were noticed by the children. One of the strangest things about this case is the fact that the family discovered a hidden room that wasn't shown in the blueprints. The room, being painted entirely red, was dubbed the Red Room. On January 8th of 1976, the couple carried out a blessing of their own. Reports say that George held a silver crucifix whilst they both recited the Lord's Prayer. While in the living room, he allegedly heard a chorus of voices asking them, "Will you stop?" Later that month, the couple had tried to do another blessing, but they said it had been too frightening to ever know for sure. So the next day, the family fled the house. The Forbidden City in China. The beautiful, sprawling Forbidden City in Beijing, made up of 980 buildings on only 180 acres, is one of China's best-known landmarks. Many ghost stories have also come from within its walls. From the 15th century through to the early 20th century, the Chinese emperor lived there, but now it's rumored to be haunted by the ghosts of the concubines. In 1421, Emperor Yongle ordered nearly 3,000 ladies-in-waiting associated with his harem, all of whom lived in the Forbidden City, to be slaughtered, because he thought that a beloved concubine had been poisoned. He spared some of his favorites in the harem, but on the day of his funeral, 16 courtesans were hung with the nooses of white silk. Today, in the Forbidden City, a lady with black hair has been seen running from a ghostly soldier. Sounds of screaming, weeping, and sword fighting have been heard, and specters of dead bodies, pools of blood, and pieces of white silk have been glimpsed. The Forbidden City is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is open to the public, although it closes before nightfall, as to not disturb any possible spirits. This castle was built in the 14th century, and it's where the Queen Mother, the late mother to Queen Elizabeth II, grew up. It's also said to be populated by a bevy of ghosts, including the Grey Lady, or the Lady of Glamis, otherwise known as Lady Janet Douglas, accused of murdering her husband by poisoning him and of using witchcraft to take down King James V of Scotland. The Grey Lady was burned at the stake in 1537 in Edinburgh. Her ghost is said to run up the stairs in the clock tower, leaving a trail of ash in her wake. A woman with no tongue has been seen roaming the park around the castle. And the ghost of an 18th century boy servant, who had been terribly mistreated, is said to haunt a seat near the door of the Queen's bedroom. The most famous ghost is Earl Beardy, or the Earl of Crawford. This noble visited the castle in the 15th century, and one night he got drunk and demanded that someone play cards with him. If no one would, the Earl declared he would play the devil himself. A mysterious hooded man dressed in black showed up at Glamis and offered to play. By the next morning, the Earl had vanished, and visitors to the castle have reported hearing swearing, loud voices, dice, and clinking glasses. Said to be Australia's most haunted house, this isolated residence was built on a hillside in New South Wales in 1884 by farmer Christopher Crawley. After he died in 1920, his wife, Elizabeth, became a Bible-immersed recluse, leaving the house only twice before she passed away. Her ghost is thought to walk the rooms, and visitors report feeling an ice-cold chill when she shows up, sometimes holding a silver cross. She has quite a bit of company, including these spirits: a maid who had plunged to her death from a balcony in the house, a stable boy who was burnt to death by his master, and a mentally disabled man who was chained in the caretaker's cottage for over 40 years. Naturally, the latter ghost makes his presence felt by clicking his chains. I've spent the past few months researching everything there is to know about ghosts and ghost hunters. I've looked at the tools ghost hunters use, real-life stories, and even different historical and cultural places that claim to be haunted. After countless hours of researching and gathering information, I've come to the conclusion that ghosts do exist, though some people may not believe because others choose to tell fake stories to gain recognition from the media. I feel that most people who are asked the question, "Are ghosts real?" that they are so quick to say no, that they don't take the time and really think why there is any evidence at all that points to ghosts not being real. To be clear, I believe that ghosts are real, based only on the historical information and the amount of different faiths and religions that incorporate ghosts into their belief. I would like to acknowledge the people that made this project possible. To start, I would like to thank my internal advisor, Adrian, for the endless support and the very often nudge on the shoulder to get moving. Next, I'd like to thank my one and only external advisor, Edward, for constantly editing my paper and giving me the tools to succeed. I'd also like to thank Jen for organizing this and also taking up half the Masterworks block by telling us what we need to get done. Finally, I'd like to thank my parents for always being on my back about getting everything done sooner than later. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for listening to my presentation.
I would like to announce that Mr. Jalan Hudda has met all the requirements of the Masterworks program at Iowa Pacific School.